Hello, welcome. I'm Dr. Burton, and today we have a special guest with us. Fulvio Di Blasi is a practicing lawyer who holds a Ph.D. in the philosophy of law. He's an expert in Aristotelian Thomist thought and natural law theory, a few of my favorite things. He has taught at several universities, including the University of Notre Dame, the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin in Poland, the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome, and the LUMSA University in Italy. He is the founder and director of the Thomas International Project. He has more than 200 publications, including articles, editorials, books, chapters, edited books, and translations. I'm going to put a list of his books in the comment section below. Some of the most recent books that he has out are From Aristotle to Thomas Aquinas in October of 2021. And the book we're going to talk about today, The Death of the Phronimos, Faith and Truth About Anti-COVID Vaccines, that was published this year. And he has one coming out this year in February, Vaccination as an Act of Love, Epistemology of Ethical Choice in Times of Pandemics. So these are very contemporary and very old conversations we're engaged with. So welcome, Dr. Di Blasi. Today we're going to talk about your book, The Death of the Phronimos. And I highly recommend this book to all of those who are watching this video. I really enjoyed your book, and I think it's a fine example of what doing public philosophy is. So my hope in having these kinds of conversations is that we can raise awareness about how philosophy affects all of life and our common life together, and that we can do philosophy better. So welcome, and I have a few questions for you, so maybe we can get into the meat of your book.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly. I'm looking forward for your questions. I have actually one more thing to add to the bio you read.
Yes.
Is that I have two great kids and a great wife who actually is a lawyer herself.
Wow.
She's an expert teacher in mediation law, and she's a great supporter of my research. Without her, I couldn't have done this research on the ethics and the epistemology of the vaccine, because I had to give up a big part of my professional life to do that since last year, because I had to decide, and it was a moral decision. I had actually to decide whether I would keep earning money as an attorney, or for some time give up income to do this research for the common good. So that was something that my wife was really supporting, and she's happy. So we are a happy family, and my kids are my conflict of interest. Now it's important to always declare your conflict of interests. So before talking about vaccines or the pandemic, so my conflict of interest is my kids. So there's no way I'm gonna have any kind of decision which is led by misleading information about the health and the future of my kids. So I would say that both for me and my wife, having to make decisions that would affect the future of our kids was the main leading factor to get really deep into what these vaccines, so-called vaccines, are and involve, and what kind of information we received about them. So that was an important,
that is
note.
very important, and yeah, and it's the future, right? What's going to happen?
It is
to the future.
Yes.
Okay, so you wrote this book, and I'm wondering if you can give us a brief summary of the central thesis of your book, and maybe tell us a little bit more about why you wrote this book.
Sure. Well, I already mentioned one of the reasons, right?
Yeah.
So, well, it's first of all is a book on applied ethics, and definitely it relates to public philosophy and morality, and is part of a bigger work. So this was not the first item in my research about the so-called vaccines. Is part of it. So my main concern was to have all the necessary information, both for individuals and for people who had to make decisions for the common good, about these so-called vaccines and about the pandemics, I mean, all the related issues, in order to make wise, good, morally good decisions, right? So, trying to analyze all the possible factors that would affect moral decision making, I came across this huge issue that was in my overall plan, was actually a third step, but it was so important for the right approach to the truth about the issue that having to decide on which, because I had to work on the overall project, of course, simultaneously, but then I had to decide to what volume I had to give precedence for the publication, because as you know, publishing a book always takes a lot of time and editing and going back and forth also from some reviewers and friends and the publishing house. And so I had to, of course, create a hierarchy, right?
Right.
And so these actually had precedence, not in the order of the content of my research. So in a sense, I have already written the drafts of 2 other books before publishing this one. But this took precedence because I realized that people were actually highly misled by public information about these vaccines. So the point of this book is to focus on how to know the truth about these drugs, this product, when the truth is actually given to us through the telling of other people. And so part of the book is about the epistemology of how to know the truth. And I decided to, using the parallelism between moral conscience and the judge in court, I decided to use this image to make the reader more involved in the kind of process I wanted to invite the reader to the kind of path I wanted the reader to walk with me. So the idea is, let's say, who are the main people or institutions who are telling us something about these vaccines? Because there is no one who has a direct knowledge about the science of the vaccines, right? And so this I identified the main figures, including science, because science is one of the characters of this story, right?
Yes.
So everybody talks about what science says and science claims, and to the point that everybody who has doubts is against science, right? For some reason, doubts is in opposition with science, right? Today in the public square, at least. And clearly, if you look at this from as a judge or as an attorney would in court, things get much simpler, because when you were in. But I want to be clear about this with whoever is listening to us. I mean, this is actually exactly what moral conscience does. I mean, you need to evaluate. The first part of the moral decision making is a cognitive process. We need to be sure that we get all the right factors, the truth of the action, of the scenario in which we are acting, right? So if we get the truth correctly, then we are free to make a decision, right? So we can make any kind of decision, but at least we are sure that we have right data.
Yes.
So when you have a truth that is not right, before your senses, is not something you are seeing or touching, right? And it's not something that you can reason about, like a formal demonstration, the premises, and you calculate the conclusion. You need to trust somebody. So when you have the parallelism here is like when you have to figure or make a decision about whether to allow a witness or an expert in court or not. So on what ground you do that? Well, first of all, you need to figure if this person has a direct knowledge of the facts. facts, or at least of the things we ask him or her about. So if he's an expert, he should have a qualified knowledge of whatever it is that whatever truth we need to know through him or her. And so having direct knowledge in this specific case is tricky, because the characters of this story I analyze are, first of all, the pharmaceutical industries, the big pharma. So I have a first chapter on the big pharma. Why? Because if we look at the science of the vaccine, it's a very tricky science, because the only people who actually know the real truth about these vaccines are the big pharma that actually produce these vaccines. But their knowledge about the vaccines is secret. So nobody has access to this knowledge. So it's not like the vaccines belong to an independent scientific community that share, in which data are shared with one another. They can be verified or analyzed or, compared. Because people got the idea that there is this amazing science, about these vaccines that we use to authorize them with the emergency use authorizations. And everybody bowed in front of this science as if it were, like a god, right? But really, in a court trial, the witness of this science, the pharmaceutical industry, couldn't even be allowed, because it's in a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So if you have a huge interest, and this is actually really huge, right? So we all grew up watching movies in which people kill one another just for maybe $1 million or even a few $1,000s, right? I mean, depending on your situation, every person's situation, right? And if we look at the diamonds business, everybody takes it for granted that people kill one another in that business.
Yeah.
But truly, the big pharma business is so big that they could buy the entire diamond business like that, right? So it's actually a place where the conflict of interest is, the top of the top, right? And so clearly they are not reliable. We cannot trust what they tell us about the vaccines. I mean, technically speaking, we need some other evidence. We need other proof, right? So the second institution we should look at is the government agency that supposedly has full access to the data and has the power to investigate, right, what the pharmaceutical companies do. And so in a sense, they have to make a decision for the public, for the common good in a state of emergency. And so we can trust them. But even there, it's tricky, right? So I have another chapter, or maybe it's the same chapter, it's different sections, but in which I focus on the kind of conflict of interest and limitations that these agencies have. And first of all, I had to, demolish a myth, right? The myth that the experts to listen to about these vaccines are physicians or epidemiologists or biologists, because truly let's say that you and me want to do some research using the primary sources on the vaccines, right, the first ones available, but the primary sources available are not scientific sources, are actually legal sources. Because if you look at the documents from the FDA or EMA in Europe, these are actually legal entities that are not independent research institutions. They are legal entities that have to evaluate whether a dangerous thing can be put into the public, square in society. It's like, the driver's license, right? In this case, you need to give a driver license to a drug, which is much more dangerous than driving a car, right? Because if you give the driver license to the wrong person, you risk a car accident, right? Just one. But with the wrong drug, I mean, you may have a genocide, as it happened. Unfortunately, all the history of big pharma is full of scandals. in which, I mentioned, for example, in the book, the Vioxx scandal, that supposedly made more than 60,000 people die. And they discovered this after a very serious 4 or 5 year studies after it was put in the market. So these things are actually huge, right? So, and so it's really, so what the FDA does is actually just to tell us in legal documents that in which we are supposed to be able to compare premises and conclusions, right?
Right.
So, and what the right profession that does it with legal documents in administrative law are lawyers, right?
Right.
So sometimes lawyers need to ask for, for an expert just to read some data. But, I read all these documents from the FDA. I mean, in my research, my methodology actually was to start with the official documents, not with, who knows what kind of conspiracy theory website or
Right.
anti-vaxxer website. No, I
Right.
just use the official documents. And I can tell you, I mean, they're not difficult to read. Actually, it's refreshing, because what is really difficult today is to listen to public news about these things. I mean, you don't get the, the premises, conclusions, you don't know what people are referring to. But when you just learn how to handle these legal documents, and you see all the supporting documents, you can actually watch also the independent, the advisory committee meetings, which are, streamed online. They're available. And so at that point, you understand that the myth of this science is entirely fake. So going back to your first question, to the very first question you asked, I mean, I realized with my wife that there was a very dangerous situation. And now I can tell you, after working so much on this research, I'm really concerned. I mean, this is a real stress test for democracies. We realized that we thought that we were in a very highly civilized society with, public school system, and in public-private, with the advanced school systems in which people have this self-awareness of being highly educated. So, but truly what we watched is that when political power aligned with mainstream media and they control communication, our societies is easily controlled and manipulated.
Yep.
And this is exactly what happened. It's a huge manipulation, and it's the biggest fraud, as far as I can tell, against informed consent ever witnessed in the history of, medicine. So there is nothing comparable to this situation. And even so, I was actually taking advantage of lockdowns and restrictions to work on other publications and other things. So I was actually pretty much, I had my self-control until I noticed that a further alignment, which is even more dangerous. I had already figured that there was a strange situation in which politics claims to be the voice of science, which is really the entrance door of dictatorship, right? Because when if the government can tell people that they are the voice of science, we need to be really worried, right?
Yes.
And mainstream media backing this up, people, they talk about herd immunity, but this is the herd immunity.
Yes.
So everybody turn into this herd, following the government signs. But then, if the government is able to even talk as the voice of morality and the church, I mean, that's really troubling.
Yes.
So when I heard this unbelievable, weird idea that getting vaccinated was an act of love, okay, that was the point in which I decided with my wife, okay, who cares about money? I'm gonna work on this. I need to re-explain the foundations of ethical choice and political choice. And I need to make it clear what actually we know and we don't know about these things, so that at least I can be of help to my friends and maybe my parish priest or whoever. I need to be at least a person in this weird situation that can be of help to whoever I can reach out to, even in a context which I'll be attacked. I knew that, right? So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
of course, it's a real war. In war theory, the main thing has always been communication, right? So this is interesting to think about, right? Something to really focus on. So today because many people say we need to trust, right? To trust humanity. How can it be that everybody is lying to us? But this is actually the major misleading idea, right? Because truly communication today is in the hands of just little oligarchy of people. It's not. We're in a very weird world in which industrial business power and governments can control the entire communication, and business more than politics.
Right.
Politics is not that important. I actually heard some interviews of people who were invited to these, meetings in which they try to shape the future. They made the richest people on earth, and sometimes they get together with influencers, and politicians are not usually invited because they are like fireworks, right?
Yeah.
There is a mechanism that people don't understand in our societies. The real people who know the mechanisms of the system are bureaucrats in parliaments, in governments. People who are elected in a parliament, they have no idea about what's going on. We were talking the other day, we emailed each other with other friends, Kelly, and we were talking about the vaccine passport, right, which is called Green Pass in Europe, right?
Yes.
But I worked a lot on this because also it's Italy is turned into a real
yes. I wanted to ask you.
State.
Okay. I want to ask you about this green passport because in these email exchanges, one of our friends was a little bit, I don't know, upset maybe that we didn't talk about the vaccine passports or the green pass in the conversation I had with Dr. Ponesi, and she left it out of her book. Right. So I'm still in a more free area, I guess. I'm not really sure what these passports are. So I was wondering if you can tell us, what are these passports? What's happening in Italy, and
and in Europe, right?
Is it going to continue?
It does. It's a concerning situation. Green passports are really, to me, is like a formal racism.
Oh, wow.
And it's a way to give you an idea as a class of people, deciding what you can do and what you cannot do, which is actually used as a public torture system. It's a violation of your freedom. So it doesn't have a logic at this point. This is clear, right? So it's just a way to force people who don't want to get vaccinated to get vaccinated. It's actually official at this point. The government doesn't even lie about this anymore. It used to. Now it's official. People, when they are interviewed, they recognize that this is just a way to create, to persecute people who don't want to get vaccinated. I'll give you there are hundreds of examples of the illogical features of this green pass. But for example, if you now come to Italy as a tourist, you can go to some places without the green pass, without being vaccinated. But Italian people who are not vaccinated and they don't have the super green pass, because now we have the super green pass and the green pass. Okay. They are multiplying, So you have different people with exactly the same situation, but the Italian one that the government wants to get vaccinated cannot access, for example, a restaurant or the post office or a bank, right? But if you are a tourist, you can do that. So it's not that the justification is about the pandemics. It's that we want you to obey. If you don't obey, we'll create a different class of people. But anyway, this just let's step back for a second. A premise is that the Green Pass is something highly sophisticated. The first laws that structure the Green Pass in Italy are so complicated that even a lawyer needs a few weeks to figure them out. So it's like recalling other 50 different laws, putting them together in a system. It involves changing the current laws on privacy and creating a digital platform that can be used from abroad and can put together your fiscal data and other data and health data. And for example, now they are giving tickets to people who don't get vaccinated. And so the tickets comes directly from IRS in Italy. So clearly they have a direct access to the vaccination status of people. So it's a very weird situation. But the point is that they are creating a huge, the Green Pass in Europe is a huge digital transformation of society. It's been prepared for a little while, and they don't make it clear. So back to and then I closed that point before, right? Politician, if a serious lawyer takes weeks to figure out the main structure of all the laws involved, regional, national, and European involved in this legal structure, imagine what a politician that was elected in the parliament just last year or a couple of years ago can understand about this. And the average politician is not an expert of anything, right? So who decides is actually the bureaucrat.
Right.
Now, bureaucrats can be easily corrupted by people with big money. So that's why, to my understanding, that's why if I were one of these very powerful people with billions, I wouldn't care about inviting to my meetings focused on shaping the future of society. Politicians who are today in the parliament and tomorrow they will be back in their, on their house on the lake, right? I want people who are still there. I want people who can actually work over time on these things and understand how they work. So basically we have a society in which there are just a few people who can control these things at the highest level. And we need to understand this. I mean, media in Italy, for example, the mainstream media received about 400 million euros last year, to talk about COVID officially. So now, then you wonder why they are so much in favor of government. I mean, they've been paid, they've been corrupted.
Yeah.
And, and all the major international agencies are actually financed by a few multi-billionaires like Bill Gates. And these people pay also and support all the fake news, the fact checks, in the world. I mean, this fact check and Ox sites on the world are actually a big commercial for whatever they want to do. It's just a way they have to make people believe that the truth they want them to believe. So if we understand this, the point is not that we don't trust science or humanity or the majority of people. We need to understand that people who are telling us about the vaccines are just a very, restrict circle of people with a lot of power in the world. Everybody else is a puppet. So, and this is actually what's happening.
I need to ask you something about this connected to the Green Pass. Mm-hmm. When I was reading that section of your book, it just seemed like this is so irrational. It can't be about health. It has to be about something else. And you mentioned control and these higher levels of power. Maybe a year ago, some friends and I had a conversation about a book called Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreher. And we thought some of the ideas in this book were far-fetched: soft totalitarianism, the social credit system. And it seems like, okay, that was a year ago and it felt a little bit like a conspiracy theory, but it seems to me that these vaccine passports and the green pass type system may be the steps that take us towards that social credit system. Do you think that's the case?
I think so, and I like to. The other day I gave an Italian class on related to my book. I'm trying to teach some classes to people who want to have a different approach to the public narrative. But of course, with people who like culture, of course, I have some fun on YouTube these days, and it's good. It's good. I mean, some people are thanking me because they can discuss about serious culture, compared to what they hear in the talk show on television. But I like to give some key interpretative viewpoints on especially political theory and political philosophy. One of these, I think, key crucial viewpoints, I like to explain it this way: to the kind of societies that the big powers we were talking about, the kind of society they need is a society that needs to be efficient compared to what they need to do. So they're mostly businessmen, right? Business people. Business is all about being efficient. Now, there is something that is not efficient in our democratic systems, which is justice. Justice is not efficient. When justice requires you to have the possibility, before being punished and sanctioned, to go to a judge, which takes time, and which is, by the way, one of the reasons why there are also mediation processes that are very successful in business, especially because going to the judge is too slow for business, right? Yeah. And it's true, mediation is a great thing, but it's an agreement. I'm actually an expert mediator, and so I can tell you, mediation, when it works, is great. But in mediation, you have two different parties or more who are in perfect control of their data. They get to an agreement, right? Mediation is not having one party able to manipulate the truth about something with the other. So mediation is a private agreement that avoids the judge, which is too slow for business, and you avoid also risks. And an agreement also is interesting in general because an agreement can create other synergies with people. So great, I'm all in favor for mediation, right? But when you have other situations in society, you need a judge, right? Because you don't have an agreement, right? So yeah. But so how can I have, if I'm Bill Gates, for example, who is the owner of the WHO, right? So he bought it basically. So people who are listening, right? So the WHO is mostly financed by Bill Gates, which is unbelievable. It's absurd. So, but that's what it is, right? So let's say I'm Bill Gates. I'm a businessman. I hate wasting my time. I hate the fact that if I want people to act in a certain way in society, I may have all this delay because of the judges. I want something immediate, right? But I know that in the humankind, when you want people who are not really that willing to obey to some rules, you need a sanction, you need a punishment, right? Yeah. So how can I have a punishment without the justice system? Okay, the green pass, the vaccine passport is perfect, because what I obtain with this is that I give you already enough of a punishment to force you to do something that you wouldn't do, and that you would be willing to go to a judge even for a couple of years if needed, right? To be sure that your right is respected. But now we have this situation. I have different people who are asking me for, I'm not working as an attorney, but I have so many people who would like to be, assisted, defended in court trials. But their situation is this: they're already punished. They cannot go to the restaurant, they cannot go to work, they cannot teach. If they're teachers, they get suspended. So if you're a physician, you don't want to, there are thousands of physicians in Italy and health professionals in general who are just at home without getting money because they've been suspended. And this punishment is not with a judge. Several colleagues all around the country, we are, we're having meetings online weekly to discuss about what to do. And they are, of course, they are, suing companies, the state. I mean, but of course, these court trials cannot stop the punishment. So these people are getting vaccinated sometimes because they cannot survive with this punishment, which is effective, is immediate, right?
Right.
In China, they made it even public. I mean, there are signs, even public signs, that show people if you are late with the mortgage or if you're late with paying a ticket. So you would pay the ticket just to avoid that people look at you and insult you on the road, right?
Wow.
So this green pass is actually, and it's clearly these powers that control the system, they want the green pass to become part of the system. The way I see it is that it's part of the idea of making society efficient, avoiding the delay of justice, because justice can create even a 2-year delay in something that the political power controlled by the real, people in charge want to obtain in society. In the system of the banks, for example, this has been enforced for years. There are some crimes that if you commit them, you cannot even open a bank account or get a mortgage or even sign something for the company you work for, because you are already punished by the system.
Okay.
And there is nothing you can do. The judge is you don't care about having a trial, having justice in court, because you need to react right away. You cannot survive with that. So I think that's the philosophy of the green pass right now.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. You said it's if we need efficiency, but efficiency for what? Like, what is the ultimate goal here with these passports? And is it just control? Is it just transforming society into the vision of some few people at the top?
It's control. It's a system.
For what,
It's a
though?
method. It's a method. It's interesting that in the European law that established the possibility of the vaccine passport, there are some purposes clearly stated at the beginning, right? They are supposed to be just a way to facilitate, right, the circulation of people around Europe in a situation which there are things to be also checked about, the security, the health, I mean, the safety of people. But supposedly this is the motivation, right? But in other countries like Italy, there is no motivation in the law. I mean, I in my book I mentioned this. I mean, there is you find just the tool, but not the reason. Because if there is no reason, you just create a system that can be theoretically applied. It can be applied to anything. Right. If you tomorrow want people to obey immediately a certain kind of directive by the government, you can use the green pass to make it effective right away. And that's it. People cannot survive. So they wouldn't even go to the lawyer at that point and to start a trial, because before the trial ends, I mean, you are already, without a house maybe, or without a job, or so. I think this is the system to control better the population, because the dream of people who are, because really we need to understand this, in the world right now, the real power is in the hand of a very few people. This never happened before in history.
Yeah.
So these few people want to be sure that if there is something really important they need to do, they're businessmen. I mean, society needs to follow up right away. So it's a tool, it's a system. Now, today they're using it for the pandemics and the vaccines in a way that is so irrational and illogical that it shows you that it's not about the reason, it's about the tool. They want you to obey. Whatever it is, they want you to be obedient. That's the point. You need to be obedient. We don't want you to think.
Okay.
We don't want you to waste our time. You need to be obedient.
That's it,
and
right there.
That's it. So today is the vaccine. Tomorrow is maybe something different. And clearly there are signs already in different states in Europe and even in the European Union that gives you the idea that they want to keep the system. So because this digital platform at the European level is extremely sophisticated, is a I don't know how much it's costing, but a lot. So this is not something they want to get rid of after the pandemic. They want to keep the system up and running. They change the privacy laws so that your data can be given to anybody at this point, all around Europe. And so now, next time it's going to be much quicker to force people to do anything using this system, and which is really concerning. It's really concerning. I think that
it is.
Some enlightened political parties, which are not part of governments right now, they should try to change these laws as soon as they are in power, because this is really concerning. And I think this is a major problem for the future. I mean, the world is the more and more in the hands of business power, not political power, business power. Yeah. Corruption has never been that big in the whole world.
This is making more sense to me as I talk to you. And something you just said, they don't want you to think, because that's not efficient.
It's not efficient, right?
But it's also not human. I mean, I'm wondering if we could talk about the title of your book, the death of the Phronimos.
Right.
I felt like it wasn't just the death, it was the suicide of the Phronimos. And I was wondering if you can tell us first, what does that word mean? Who is this person? What happened to him? And is that part of how they are able to control?
Well, the Phronimos, for people who are Aristotelian lovers, is the wise person, the person with practical wisdom. And it's not just the person with practical wisdom, it's the person who is really the good person, the person who incarnates the moral truth. Because in classical morality, the truth doesn't belong to rules and principles, first of all. It belongs to the human person. So if you want to understand what a good person is, you should look at the good person first. You shouldn't read the code of some kind of rules, right? And so Aristotle, for reasons that you and I would love to talk about forever, but people who are listening would be scared. So don't worry, I'm not getting into this kind of things in my book, except for a very general level that helps us understand morality. But for Aristotle, the Phronimos is actually the real proximate rule of moral action. So because for many reasons, which are the real core of ethics epistemology, there is no way to deduce the action to perform here and now from some general rules. So you need really a prudent person who is able to show you what is the good thing to do here and now. And this person is also, precisely because he's a good person, morally good, is also beautiful. Something that people don't appreciate enough is that Aristotle, when he talks about the moral good, not the good as a useful good or as pleasurable, because there are meanings of the good which in our lives are what is pleasant and what is useful, which is a good thing, right? But it's not the moral reason why we do things. For example, having a good friend is definitely, for Aristotle, is the most useful and pleasurable, pleasant thing in the world, right? But if we treat our friend as just an instrument for our pleasure, of our, getting a ride to go to the movie theater, okay, we are going to lose that friend, or at least we are not going to enjoy that friendship, because we enjoy friendship when we actually love our friend, right? So when Aristotle talks about the moral good, he always adds beautiful to it. So good and beautiful. And this is the reason why when we watch a movie in which there is such a morally good character, we love it. Sometimes we cry. I mean, it's attractive. The moral good is attractive, is an aesthetic experience at the same time. So this is what happens in Christian ethics when we read Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the Phronimos in Christianity, right? So when we need to understand what to do in our lives, we don't want to read the commandments. We want to ask ourselves, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
And when Jesus meets the rich young man, he wants to be sure that he observes the commandment, but then he asks him, okay, follow me, because I am the rule. I mean, I am the Phronimos. If you really want to be perfect, you should just follow me, do what I do. So in a sense, as St. Augustine wrote, I mean, the commandments are in a sense the foundations, the floor on which we need to walk, right? But then we need to act morally. I mean, given that you don't kill your mother, what are you going to do to make her happy? I mean, that's the real thing, right? So it's really the entrance door to being. But this being good and beautiful is what we should look at in our moral examples. So, I mean, morality is about examples. It's about wanting to be the hero of that movie. I mean, that character is so attractive, so good that I want to be like him. That's morality. Now, the point is, who is talking to us about these vaccines? I mean, are people who are so good and beautiful that we want to be like them or not? But when we trust people, we need to trust people who are trustworthy,
right?
Who are morally good. And also, if we change side from the point of view of these people who have so much power to communicate, that's the suicide, because they would have a big chance of being morally good and beautiful. And some of these people are already powerful enough not to need anything else, right? But they still lie, and they damage what they could be, morally speaking. So when I thought of a good title for this book, in which what I do is actually to analyze all these people telling to us about the vaccines and all these other people believing them, I thought, okay, this is the opposite. The world is upside down. I mean, we are trusting the wrong people, and these people are doing exactly the opposite of what they should do. So it's really the ethical world is upside down. And also something really evil happens, and not many people notice that. I mean, in Italy, it's clear. I mean, it's probably clear in other states, but I don't follow enough the news. I mean, I read articles from abroad, but it's easier for me to watch the real people talking right now in Italy, of course. And it's clear that people are insulting the doubters, right? Insulting, telling them that they are evil. So I felt like I've been insulted so many times. I mean, like being evil, selfish, against the common good. I mean, a terrorist. I mean, there are some experts and politicians in television who even mention that we should be like killed like in war when we have a deserter, right? So I mean, we've been insulted in so many ways, but the evil part, the demonic part, is that these people who are the opposite of the Phronimos, right? They don't act in a way that is morally attractive and beautiful. They enjoy telling other people who are actually good, they try to understand what's good, what they should do according to their moral conscience. They enjoy telling them that they are evil. Because if you were, a devil, what would be the highest level of joy for you, right? It would be to actually insult the good person, telling him that he is evil, right? Because you totally reverse the good and evil, which is the worst thing that can happen, right? When John Paul II wrote the Evangelium Vitae, right, the encyclical letter in which he condemns abortion and euthanasia and killing the innocent in general. So he lists at the beginning a bunch of terrible things that happen in the world, right? But then he adds, but the most concerning thing right now is actually that humanity today are losing the perception of what is good and what is evil. They are actually turning good into evil and vice versa. And we are way beyond that point, but also a good reading of the end of time in Christianity, according to the Apocalypse, right, is a moment in which things are going to get so confused that even the saints will doubt. Now, this level of confusion in which the evil insults the good person, telling the good person that he's evil, and the good person wonders whether maybe he is evil. I have some friends who actually are trying to come up with some good moral reasoning about the vaccines, but sometimes they tell me, Fulvio, maybe we are evil. I mean, what's going on? I mean, it doesn't look like, but so I think this is very diabolical, and it's part of this weird picture.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think as you're speaking, I'm thinking the real conflict is between good and evil out there.
It is.
And we are confused about the good, let's say like that, the good, the telos.
I think it is, and all the more reasons. I think that especially experts in ethics and legal theory need to raise, and we need the rise of the right people right now to be witnesses and prophets too. I mean, I would tell all my friends, because I think that another thing that we are seeing in this world is that it's full of cowards, right? So, but we cannot be cowards. So I have so many colleagues who are not talking because they just want to, not being ostracized, or they don't want to lose their job, or but even inside the church, I mean, for Christians, I can tell you, I mean, I know that there are even priests who don't talk because they know that they would be in trouble. This is not a good time for the church. I mean, it is definitely not a good time, for a historical time for the church. But the world is full of cowards. But in the history of the Jews and Christians, I mean, we have also the prophets. And the prophets is not just one person who died, thousands of years ago. The prophet is each of us in times which we need to shout, risking our lives. The prophets have been, killed. They are people who react against people in charge, in power. And they run the risk of being even killed. But someone needs to shout. I mean, if nobody says anything, that would be the death of society. So the prophets is doing something for the common good, to the point of sacrificing himself or herself. So I would say that each of us needs to rediscover the prophet in him or her, because, which is the opposite of being coward. And so I take advantage of this. Let me tell all my colleagues, even in ethical theory, who are not even emailing me, and I usually had so many contacts with them all the time. These days, I don't even get a like in some comments on the social from some people who are supposedly experts in Catholic and Christian ethics. You are cowards. So I'm not going to tell you individually because I don't think it's charitable. but I don't have you in high esteem right now. This is not a time for cowards. It's a time for war and for prophets. So, and this is really important. So whoever is, of my colleagues and friends are listening to this, I despise people who don't speak up these days. That's not what ethical people. So it's useless to spend our lives studying ethics and moral philosophy or moral theology and then to just wait for better times.
There aren't
being
going
sure
to be better
right?
times.
Yeah, there are not going to be there, but for their jobs there are, right? Because if they're aligned, they don't risk anything. There will be a better time for them, but at the cost of their moral conscience, which is terrible. So they were going to lose a little bit of humanity, but at other levels they will have some better time. It's sad, but so
okay, this is making me think of another audience. So we have our colleagues who may be doing philosophy, but we also have students who are young people and are thinking about their future. And I think there are young people out there who want to know the truth and who want to be courageous, but they don't know. They don't have a wise person to follow. What can we say to them?
I was some of the best years of my life were in high school and in college. So if I could go back, I mean, these are really years I enjoyed so much. These years are years for heroes. I mean, we are at that age. I mean, I use the plural in, out of time. Let's talk, from eternity viewpoint. So in those years, we are ready and willing to change the world. We need to, and we have also an advantage. We don't have a lot of experience of life, so that's a limitation. We don't have a special expertise about any kind of area of in the job market or in anything like that, right? In politics but we have a pretty good sense of good people and bad people, and so we can connect with the Phronimos much better.
Yeah.
So choose wisely. Look in the face, in the eyes at people who you can trust, and then when you find them, stick to them and change the world, because you're still young. You can do that. Don't bow to this world when it doesn't behave, right? So recognizing the Phronimos is not that complicated, because there is something beautiful and attractive in people who are honest, just, truthful. So today everybody lies. I mean, it's terrible. It's like nobody cares about. The whole point is to be successful is in some kind of talk show context, or but that's a lie. It's total lie. So, but you, when I say you, I mean teenagers and young people in college. You can sense that pretty well. You need just to make a strong moral decision. Should I conform to this system or should I react? You have all the energies you want to react. Do it. So I truly believe that you are the only class of people they cannot control right now, because you don't have right now a job. The more you get older, the more you get utilitarianist, because you feel like you have more to lose, right? So that's why people who are getting older, if they don't stick to strong moral values, they get worse. So being morally good is a strong decision, but it's easier for you than for older people. So do it, because you have a stronger energy, less experience, less to lose, and so you can fight better. Do it and choose wisely the Phronimos.
I think that is great advice, and I feel like I always like to end our interviews on a ray of hope. I think that that's the hope, that the young people still can get wisdom, get understanding, and change the world. Now, with that being said, I think they need to read some of your other books because the philosophical works are really the ones that teach us about wisdom. But for our audience, it's some people are interested in talking about COVID. Some are talking about Aristotle, some about Thomism. So tell us some of the other things you're working on during your pandemic years. What are you working on?
Well, even in my current books, which are on applied ethics, I take advantage of I have, in a sense, on the one hand, in applied ethics, you need to stick to the facts really in a technical way. So you need to be sure that you know exactly what you need to know. I mean, if the applied ethics involves epidemiological data or biological data, you need to know them. Otherwise, you cannot decide what is good to do or not. I mean, you cannot give advice about ethics if you don't know exactly the context, right? So in order to write my books, I constantly call colleagues in other areas, especially medical science and epidemiology, statisticians, and so part of my books are very technical, and they require not very technical. I mean, I try to write in a way that is pleasant somehow, but I need real data. So, but also I take advantage of these books to stick to a real understanding of morality. So in the Death of the Phronimos, there is a strong part on virtue ethics in which I try to also go through some virtues and vices that we need to learn how to recognize, right? Yeah. And also I take advantage of the need for knowing the truth to explain some basic truth about epistemology and our knowledge of the truth. So I would recommend this book also to just any student who wants to understand better how to know the truth in general, understand how to have a right approach to our knowledge of reality in general, and to students who want to understand how ethics works in terms of virtues and vices, and but also in the book I already published in Italian, which is still I'm still editing the English version, which should be ready in a couple of weeks, but even less, maybe. Vaccination as an Act of Love. This book has a first part, which is a review of moral action theory, in which I explain how to evaluate moral action, and there is a part of moral conscience and a part on the so-called sources of moral action, so the object, the circumstances, and the end. And through this book, you get a good sense of what an ethical analysis is and what moral conscience is. And then I also try to explain through the second part how to analyze the circumstances of this particular case and how to deal with different viewpoints according to different sciences. So this helps a lot in moral philosophy too. But of course, I had to, in a sense, I'm so eager to get off the pandemics because I need to go back to my other research. But, I actually had a book which was ready for publication. I was actually proofreading, and not proofreading. I was taking into account some suggestions that some reviewers gave to me. And it was a book I really care a lot about in Introduction to Philosophy. So I really hope to have those 2-3 weeks just to work on these books and publish it. And I have it in double language already because on some books I really care about, I work always in both on the Italian and English version at the same time. And another major work I hope to go back to as soon as possible is a sort of, there is something weird in our society from this viewpoint. It's like we are losing our vocabulary, the deep one. So we don't have anymore a deep vocabulary. People even, and young people don't get used to just use a few words like fantastic. Okay, try to modulate words because we need to, from my viewpoint, of course, we need to recover a right vocabulary, a nuanced vocabulary in ethical theory. So even working on, while I was working on an ethical project for some actually business companies in the US that had the idea of creating some kind of ethics engine as a software to improve morality in the companies. It was a very interesting project. I worked for them and with them for a couple of, or even more than 3 years probably. I took advantage of that time to create a sort of vocabulary to define all important key concepts in terms of virtues, vices, principles, and precepts that we should remember, and we need to understand how to take into account all these different aspects of our being, right? Because people don't have a clue. I mean, even for understanding how to make a prudential reasoning, I mean, there are so many aspects of our reasoning that we should, when we are able to name something, it means that we understood that there is something more in reality. I mean, naming things is a strong philosophical approach to the world.
Yes.
We have a name, an extra name when we create a distinction. If in a confusing panorama of things, then at a certain point we get closer and we see that there are 2 things, 3, 4, 5, and we need more names, right? But if we are distracted, if we don't have enough culture, we just use a few names without even knowing what they mean exactly. So imagine that I have more than 400 or 500 entries for a sort of ethical book, or maybe in more volumes, I don't know, in which I define and explain how they work and what they are and how to relate with one another. And I use a lot of Aristotle and Aquinas, but not only. I also use more contemporary concepts, which are really interesting in several fields of ethical applied theory. And I hope to be able to, finish this and publish it, because it's part of a recovery mission. I mean, recovering our culture in terms of semantics, right?
Yes, and it's important.
And I had my major work. What I consider my major work is a rereading of Thomas Aquinas, his entire ethics and anthropology part. That I've been working on it for a long time. It's my most nuanced work on Thomas Aquinas. I had more than 500 pages already written, and
wow.
And polished. I had to retranslate several things from Latin, because I don't find any translation in our available languages in Western societies satisfactory for understanding Aquinas correctly. So, but this life has been busy, and this is a major work. So I hope to be able to finish this and publish it maybe in a few volume series. So, but this would be my major thing.
Well, I hope when you publish another book, we can have you back. Maybe.
Well, I mean, the next one is going to be this Vaccination as Act of Love. So maybe we can talk back next month.
I think we should. So I know this is going a little bit long, and sometimes people don't like long videos. I like long videos, but
me too.
So
by the way, I have a very easy for the students who are listening. I have a fun ethical books I wrote for students. Actually, I was teaching at Notre Dame, and I thought that I needed to have them read something which was fun in the sense of visualizing difficult moral concepts in a funny way. So using some movies and Spider-Man, Tolkien, and so I published a very short book with the idea of giving a sketch of key ethical concepts, but in a more pleasant way, which is very easy reading. It's called what is it called?
I think I have it.
Okay, which one? Do you remember the title? Yes,
on.
exactly. So what's the title? I can't
Wisdom and Thomistic Wit, Happiness and the Good Life.
Okay, that one. Okay, that's a book I would recommend to young people, especially.
Okay, I will put a link to it down below. I personally am going to be reading. I just ordered I'm looking for the title, From Aristotle to Thomas Aquinas, Natural Law, Practical Knowledge, and the Person. It should come tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've been doing some conversations with others on the problem of neoliberalism, individualism, personhood. So it sounded like this could be helpful in that conversation.
That's actually one of the, in terms of scholarly research, that's one of the two most important books I think I published so far. So if you want to have a different scholarly discussion, even though some of the chapters are actually good for students too, but overall it's a book for, it's a scholarly research book. But so if you want to discuss about this book, okay, that's my cup of tea. I mean, it's
Okay.
yeah.
Well, maybe. What I like to do sometimes is get a group of people to read the book together with me, and then we talk to the author. So maybe we can do
I
something
love
like that.
that. Okay.
That would be fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Di Blasi, for joining us. I really look forward to having you back, and I look forward to seeing how people respond to this video, because I think it's very helpful. I think they should read your book. I have it here. Faith and Truth About Anti-COVID Vaccines, The Death of the Phronimos. And some of you are probably going to be new to my channel, so please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. I'm almost there with the 1,000 subscribers, but I need more watch hours. So if you can help me out, that would be awesome. All right. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.
I subscribed. I'm one of the subscribers.
Thank you.